Those who went to private school, what was the best rich kid meltdown you witnessed? Story 1. I had a rough time in public elementary school, so I went to a private Catholic school for middle school. I'm Jewish, but they let me attend, no doubt for the tuition, and just made me go to the computer lab when we did religious class or went to mass. One girl there hated me. Just straight up would make fun of me because I was poor. My family was solidly middle class, so no. Or because my mom was an Eastern European immigrant and speaks with a thick accent. Or because I was a Jew. First time I had anti-Semitic stuff hurled at me was from this little brat, because I didn't have to sit through mass and got to play Oregon Trail instead. So my bat mitzvah came around, and my teacher decided to use it as a learning moment for the class. I explained what it was, that I got to have a big party, the whole thing. Of course, a bunch of 12 to 13-year-olds are going to be into it, especially since I was the only Jew any of them were actually close with. The attention was off her, and she was getting more and more annoyed with it all. The Monday after my party, when everyone was talking about it, she threw a huge fit in the parking lot after school when her mom picked her up, because she wouldn't let her have a bat mitzvah. Apparently she had asked, her mother said, "We're not Jewish, and you were having a sweet 16 in a few years." No. She lost her marbles, and had a meltdown because she couldn't have a party celebrating a ritual of a religion she wasn't a part of, and wouldn't be partaking in. When she had talked smack about me being that religion for the last few months, I still remember my mother picking me up that day, listening to her in the parking lot before looking at me and saying, "What a little brat, eh?" Her mom sounds like an awesome lady. Also, I don't really understand the concept of sweet 16s. Wouldn't you just celebrate your 18th birthday, which is an age that carries actual meaning? Story 2. A bit of backstory. Sao Paulo has really bad traffic and rush hour is just miserable. Hours to go a few miles. So this girl who used to be nicer when young became a total brat in high school. One day her driver picked her up in the wrong car. It wasn't the Mercedes-Benz S-Class but a more normal car. She completely ignored him, refused to acknowledge he was there or waiting for her to get in the car. So that poor guy had to return to her house without her in the worst traffic imaginable to get the Benz, and drive back to pick up a spoiled brat who started yelling at him for being incredibly late. And I'm 100% sure he didn't drive the Benz in the first place because her dad forbade the driver from taking it. Story 3. Currently in a very wealthy private school in Manhattan. Many are wealthy, and many who are in financial aid, but culture in the school is to be pretty humble about wealth. A girl, who actually just moved here, was telling me about her $50 million trust fund in her daddy's private plane. She picks up her phone and I see a text from her mom. I look over and see what appears to be a long apology from her mom about something. I ask her what she's apologizing for. The girl explains that she went crazy on her parents the night earlier for making her fly first-class commercial, but she was the one receiving the apology. I don't think I managed to stifle my laughter. "Oh no, not first-class commercial. Ooh, how terrible." Meanwhile, in my household, "Mom, can I have $20? Mom, no." Story 4. Kid in my school got a Jeep for his birthday and complained for ages. The next year, his parents got him a boat. Apparently, he didn't like the shape of the interior. The brat couldn't even sail. It was basically a floating RV that stayed at the marina and never went anywhere. The next year, he got a helicopter, which, surprise, surprise, he didn't like for some reason. A running joke was that his parents were always buying him modes of transportation so that he'd leave home and they wouldn't have to listen to his whining. They bought him a freaking helicopter? I'm just speechless. Story 5. I knew a kid back in 4th grade. He was a little tyke, a real jerk to everyone, and would lord himself over you in just about any conceivable way possible to get you to do his bidding. One day some girl stood up to him and refused to do something. I forget what, it's been years. And he started yelling and screaming about how his big shot lawyer daddy was going to sue her family for everything her family had. Come to find out, the kid's been trying this with other kids and they all come to her defense. He turned bright red, like cherry red, and started screaming about how this whole school wanted to bring him down and that he deserved everything that we all had, really going to town on being an entitled little brat. Ultimately, we found out that she'd forgotten to bring him his pencil he'd lent after her class, and that's what started the entire tirade. She forgot a pencil. Apparently, that was one expensive or one special pencil because he never shut up about it the rest of the semester, and we constantly harass and bully this poor girl over it. Kid wound up getting pulled out of school because the bullying was so bad, and little mop went around for the next year saying that he had her removed from the school, and his daddy was the one who had her parents remove her, saying she was worthless. He was expelled 2 years later from the same school. I wasn't there anymore, but apparently, he'd brought a gun to school to try and show what kind of a badass he really was. An update on the bullied girl. I spoke with her 2 years ago and she's actually turned out well. 28, living in Ohio as a middle management for a cleaning company for upscale hotels. She has a wife and adopted a baby girl. She's an amazing person, and I feel so bad for how she was treated, but in the end, she's the one with the last laugh. No known history of the After he was expelled, some rumors flew about, but never anything substantial coming about of it. Last heard, he'd fallen in tough times, didn't escape juvie from the gun incident and got kicked out of daddy's house. Some friends say they saw him working at some clothing store as a part-time janitor, but I can't be certain. This sounds like how World War II was started in an alternate universe.
Hey, guess what? Our team just introduced Rufus rugs. Premium, custom, hand-tufted rugs.
Imagine having your own unique rug that perfectly reflects your style. Whether you're a dedicated Naruto fan or simply adore Pokemon and can't resist displaying bus toys, we can turn your dreams into reality. We can create almost anything you want. Don't wait. Dive deeper into the world of Rufus rugs by clicking the first link in the description.
Story 6. It wasn't a private school, rather a public school in a very wealthy town. We really did have the best of everything at my school. My family is fairly wealthy. Some of the kids I grew up with, though, were heirs to vast fortunes. DuPont, sports empires, etc. I was sitting in the lobby at my high school. Dolce & Gabbana Motorola Razr. She was going on and on about how exclusive it was. This other girl rounded the corner and was like, "Oh my god, I just got the same phone." The first girl looked like she was going to choke her out. She got the girl to hand her phone and said, "Poor girls like you don't deserve fashion accessories like this," and snapped her phone in half. The other girl took it unbelievably well. I actually became friends with her after that. Turns out that she was not poor at all. Mother was one of the heirs to the Sears fortune, and her father was a bigwig at Motorola. Best part is that she got her father to give her 50 of these stupid gold D&G phones and handed them out a few days later to a bunch of kids at school. I still have mine somewhere in the box. I appreciated the gift, but never used it. Story 7. Not a kid, but a parent. I went to an expensive private school on a scholarship, and was friends with this girl, Samantha, whose mom had security cameras in every room of the house and would constantly spy on her. Also had monitoring programs in the computer, etc. My parents mentioned this to me once, and being a stupid kid, I told Samantha. The mom flipped. I'm talking calling my parents several times a day to berate them to the point where they had to block her number. I was never allowed over to her house again. Samantha and her friends bullied me relentlessly for the rest of the year. It was pretty traumatic, honestly. I didn't understand what was going on because I thought I was doing the right thing by telling her. They did the right thing. Poor Samantha, though, brainwashed with bad parenting. Story 8. Not exactly a meltdown, but a behavior issue. This kid was the senator's son and in my history class behind me. He always acted entitled, and the teacher even praised his father like he's God. We got our test grades back, and he happens to see I got a really good grade. For some reason, as we were passing our tests up the rows for the teacher to recollect, he says, "Pick these up by yourself, nerd," and throws them all across the floor in front of me. This was high school. I hadn't even witnessed such a cheap way of bullying since elementary school. Maybe it's because I'm a girl, but I was so surprised by his method of bullying that I just stared at him until he had to pick it up himself. Ha! Acting puzzled in the face of a bully is generally the best defense. Story 9. I didn't go to a massively pricey private school. Most of the kids there were from middle-class families who spent most of their money sending their kids to my school because the other options were so damn bad. But there were exceptions. We had 5 math sets and I was in the top one. One day, one of the rich kids decided it would be funny to blow his nose in a 20-pound note and tossed it in a bin. The teacher sees this and flips out. He says if the kid ever does anything that vain again, he will move him to the bottom set. Now about 3 weeks have passed and the moron does it again. The teacher wasn't bluffing and kicked him down 4 classes. Being in set 5 compared to 1 was like walking into a room filled with mentally ill Peter Griffins. After 1 class, the kid comes back blubbering to the teacher just as we were all leaving to beg to get back in the class. It was like chicken soup from a middle-class soul. I was happy for weeks. Story 10. I go to a normal school, but this one made me laugh. In year 9, 13, or 14, we had a ski trip to Italy, which was damn cool. This mega-rich stupid girl who sees Kim Kardashian as a role model because she gets expensive things had a meltdown so bad we could hear her wailing from the other end of the town, so we went over to see the commotion. You see this girl sitting on the floor covered in tears and expensive Gucci handbags and scarves, etc. She's crying because she spent the 2,000 euros she came here with and can't afford the 800 euro Gucci purse in the window of this shop. She got on the phone back home and explained the situation to her mother, who apologized profusely and sent her another 3,000 to her bank account so she can buy more Italian brands. I'm fairly sure she still ran out. This year in year 13, we're having a prom so we can all get ludicrously pissed, organized by students. She managed to get on the prom committee and threw a fit so large that we could hear it on the other side of the school building. Upon asking the other members, we found out the screaming was because the prom wouldn't be fancy dress themed. The rest of the school agreed that fancy dress was a stupid idea, but yet the complaining continues. She's not too bad anymore though because she's the only super rich person in my school, so her friends rein her in a bit when she's being ridiculous. Thank God. Normal school, ski trip to Italy. Am I the only one who doesn't think this is something a normal school does? Am I also the only one who thinks you should leave a like in this video and subscribe to the channel? I sure hope not. Story 11. Went to a private school in Switzerland. Rich Arabs and Russian children in the boarding school. Most of them were You just had to make sure to be friendly with the right ones. One time, one had a boat party in the Lake of Geneva. Mind you, we're like 13 to 14 at the time. No parental supervision. The way some of them treated the waiters was horrendous. One not-so-rich kid took it upon himself to stand up for them. Took a big bottle of champagne and poured it over the birthday boy's best friend after he pushed one of the waiters. The kid started crying and screaming. We had just docked and he ran off. The kid that poured the champagne was forced to change schools a few weeks later. School said it was his failing grades, but we all knew the parents must have something to do with it. There's a few other stories, but all I know is that most of these rich kids and their families are really hypocritical. I remember the rich Mormons going drinking all the time, and the Arabs loved their bacon and their burgers. Story 12. I was going to a normal public high school at the time. There was this girl in a youth group I was in who put everyone else down. She would go on and on about how much her parents loved her, and how they loved her so much that she got to go to a fancy private school. Sue would really rub it in too. Not having a good day, grades not so good, sick day. Well, if only your parents loved you enough to send you to private school like mine do. It was annoying and hurtful to everyone. Well, one day I'm walking down the hall to my next class, and I see the principal introducing a new student to the teacher. It was none other than this girl. Her folks must have gotten sick of her attitude. They decided to put her back into public school for an attitude adjustment. The next few weeks were great. How much do your folks love you? You know, that was likely the best thing that ever happened to her. Story 13. This isn't from me. I went to a private school, but the kids there were reasonably well adjusted, if a little out of touch. But my mom was a teacher at a private school. Prepare yourself for the wall. So for this kid's 18th birthday, he gets this sweet red Porsche, which he drives to school. He doesn't need to drive it to school because he lives literally 30 seconds walk away in the estate where the houses start at about £3 million. But he does because he's a because this beautiful car must not be forced to mingle with the commoner cars of the other sixth form students. He's given permission to park it in the staff car park, which is still commoner cars but on a secured lot. Around a week on, he's showing off to his friends by messing around in his car in the staff car park and slams the passenger side of his car into the back of a staff car. The staff car is an old farmer mobile, Jeep, from the 90s, so it is not in the least disturbed or dented from having a sports car wrapped around it. No one was in the passenger side. The driver was fine, but the car itself looked like a really expensive boomerang. Of course, the kids start screaming and crying and complaining, threatening all sorts of legal action. My mom was his head of year at the time, so he comes running to her demanding something to be done. But she does everything but outright laughs in his face and tells him, alas and alack, he's on his own. The next day, my mom comes into work and some very irate and powerful parents are waiting in her office, demanding to know why the school wasn't doing anything about the fact that a staff member had crashed into their son's car, and threatening to press criminal charges if the school didn't pay up. Kid's there with a grin on his face, but this isn't my mother's first rodeo. Oh no, she's prepared. Oh, well, that's not what teacher who owned the car said what happened. Let's review the CCTV, shall we? Obviously, the kid is now bricking it, and the parents agree to watch it, knowing they will be vindicated. Of course, it shows the kid donutting around in his car before smashing into the Jeep. The parents slowly turn to the kid. The kid starts ranting and raving, honest to God, full breakdown. My mom was worried an ambulance would have to be called to treat this child. Eventually, the parents agreed to pay for any damages to the staff car. The kid got a new car, but it was something like a third-hand Ford Ka, and he wasn't allowed to drive it to school anymore. Got even better when, the next year, his bro came into the sixth form and got a sweet ride, and he told my mom that the original had been banned from driving it, as well as the parents' new cars when he had crashed his Ka. Rich, reasonable parents? That's twice as rare as parents with one of those qualities. Story 14. I know a guy who didn't get into a college he really wanted to go to. Instead of accepting it, his parents spent millions to pay for a wing of a new building to be built, and after that, the college accepted him. He still had to pay full tuition, $60K per year after that too. Story 15. In high school, this kid bounced from private school to 2 different public schools because he was such a miserable little kid and was always starting fights, getting into trouble with teachers and the administration, etc. He was universally loathed by students and teachers alike. During one semester, he decided to pick on 2 female classmates who were close friends. They were your typical kind of emo quiet girls who kept to themselves. He called them a bunch of slurs, shoved them in the halls, etc. Of course, it's not long before he leaves our school for another to avoid punishment for some random thing he did. His parents were entitled monsters too, and they didn't want their precious spawn to suffer the consequences of being himself. About a year later, during sophomore year, he's back. He did something and was sent out into the hall by a teacher. Lo and behold, the 2 girls who had been bullied mercilessly by this kid are roaming the halls together. See him sitting in a chair outside class and he's crying, like real actual tears and inconsolable. This had happened just after our morning break, and being a growing young man, he had a couple of small cartons of chocolate milk with him. The girls saw their chance and in that moment enacted their revenge. One took the unopened carton and threw it onto the floor, hard enough for it to bust open and splatter all over him, while the other took the open carton and just chugged the chocolate milk in front of him in some sort of Animal Planet-like display of dominance. Then they just walked away like bamfs. He ended up getting into more trouble when he disrupted his class again to tattle to the teacher about his spilled chocolate milk. I don't know if the teacher believed him or not, but Mr. P didn't give a damn and tried to assign him a school suspension for the milk throwing. Of course, the punishment never happened because his parents moved him to another school, but word got around that the school bully was such a tidy baby that he cried over literal spilled milk. It's hard to hold on to any kind of high school bully street cred when you're covered in chocolate milk and crying about how the 2 quiet girls stole from you in front of your entire class. He came back to our school one more time, but from that point on, he went from predator to prey and never managed to live the incident down. We are in our early 30s now. He's since gone prematurely bald and lives in his father's basement, never went to college or started any kind of career, but did somehow manage to knock up a high schooler a couple of years ago. He alternates between being a roided-up rageaholic gym rat and a frat crybaby. That's actually quite sad. All I can think of is that it's just a waste. I bet he's awesome at Call of Duty, though. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy Comp People, What Made You Snap? Story 2 is awesome. See you on that one.